Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Lecha with your host, Rabbi Anibal. Great to see you all. Sorry about that. Sorry about last week. We couldn't have a class, but I had a funeral, and it was a graveside. Just I couldn't make it back in time to have the class. So too bad. Once in a while, this kind of overlap happens. Hopefully not too often. But thank you again, everyone, for being here. Let's say welcome to Elkanah. Welcome, Brenda. And welcome, Shelley, David, Ariel Lee, also here. Welcome, everyone. Randy, welcome. I have single espresso today. Okay? Just in case you're wondering what I'm drinking. So welcome, Julia. Welcome. And let's see. Yeah, that's it for now. If there is anybody else there, please say hello. Like Holly Mandelkern, for example. Welcome, shalom to all. Shalom to you. Lori is here as well. You know that you probably read in the news or heard in the chat that if you're connected to the service that we had pretty bad weather for the last couple of days. I've never been before exposed to a threat of a tornado. I know many of you who lived in Texas probably you have it quite often, right? And I don't know whatever everybody else lives. But here in Winnipeg is pretty uncommon. And I saw some of the photos that were pretty scary. I've never got in my cell phone an emergency message from the government saying, go to your basement. Never had it before. And all of a sudden I had it more than once. It was a little scary until about midnight that everything started to wrap up. I mean, the winds. Yeah, Laura, you have hurricanes. But like here in Winnipeg, I always heard, this is the prairies. You may have it, but I've been here for 24 years. And I never been exposed to this kind of emergency that we had for the last couple of days. Now, funny thing is that when everything cleared, and again, there were floods and lots of problems in the city. But specifically my house, what was shocking is that the next morning I went outside. Who knew? The garbage bin and the recycle bins, they were still there, untouched, unmoved, same spot. And then we have a pool in the backyard. All the pool furniture and things and even the cushions didn't move. Almost like a little miracle. Because we had, regular rains, not even a storm, but rain, and then things ended up in the pool, and the trash the trash can end up in the street, and then I have to get it. Not this time. It was like very weird. Very weird. So Brenda, we don't have a siren here for this, but now the government implemented this push notification. So even if you have your cell phone as do not disturb and anything, you get the emergency notification pushed to you anyway. So yeah. Hello, Galia. Welcome. Yes, I'm Israel High. And yeah, it was a weird experience. And the rain is still there. It's rain itself hasn't stopped. And I'm supposed to have like a baseball game today, but I don't know if it's gonna go ahead or what. I don't know. Illinois, says Julia. A tornado went through. Very scary. Wow. Sorry to hear that. Here, I don't know about the aftermath in some more rural areas, but I know that some highways, like section of the highway, disappeared. Well, they sunk. Very scary. And so that means that communities got isolated. There is lots of remote areas here in Manitoba. That's one of the things, a lot of land. So, I don't know. Shelley said, yeah, we got the emergency thing on phones, radio, and TV. Yeah, funny thing is, I don't listen to over the air radio or regular TV. You don't get a notification on Netflix, right? Because basically that's what we were doing while we had the tornado outside. We were watching Netflix, and they don't say anything. So it's kind of weird, I have to say. Okay, said that. Let's begin with the class. Okay, we have a brand new parsha. For today, we are going to study Shlach Lecha. Even though we couldn't study last week's parsha, I realized I should have brought a little bit of it too. Didn't think about it, but we are going to focus on this week's parsha, which is Shlach Lecha. Most famous thing about this parsha is this is the one where Moses sent the 12 spies to scout the land, right? And well, it was an issue. I mean, it was very exciting to be able to, for the first time, send people to see how the land of Israel was. Everything was a promise from God, but nobody, not even Moses, have seen that land before. They didn't have internet to go and read a catalog, right? Or to watch a video on YouTube to know what to expect. So they sent these spies to go see the land and to bring a report. The problem is that even though they sent 12 spies, when they came back, 10 of them said there is no way, we have to go back to Egypt. Only 2 of them were strong enough to go against the majority. In this day and age, you will call that peer pressure. Peer pressure is something that we all go through in one way or another, or different extents. But we all go through peer pressure. I don't know if you remember any occasion when you were the only one thinking one way and you feel like everybody else is going the other way. Or maybe it's just you and somebody else, but that's it. So what do? Do you remain strong in your belief? Or you said, you know what? It's not worth it. I'm going to join them. It's something that we all go through, and we have to make this decision all the time. Is my argument or my cause important enough to remain strong on my belief, or it's not a big deal? I will let it go, and I will go with the rest. Because, let's be honest, not every situation is the same. Sometimes we are fighting petty fights. So being on the other side, sometimes it's petty. It's a petty fight. So we let go. We follow the majority, right? But some other times it's different. Sometimes we feel that it goes against our principles, against our morals, and we have a tough decision ahead. Should we join the majority, or should we stay firm on our belief as a minority opinion and to see what we can do to change the situation while we don't change ourselves? So that is something that I would like to hear from everybody. Let me know what you think about this, because this is what this parsha is all about. Okay? About a couple of stubborn spies. Spoiler alert. There were Yoshua bin Nun and Caleb ben Yefuneh. Yoshua bin Nun, Joshua, very famous because eventually he became the next leader of the people of Israel. So now you can understand a little bit also why. Caleb ben Yefuneh is a lesser character. It's not such a popular character in the Torah, but nevertheless he is praised by the rabbis for his courage to remain strong in his belief. And in fact, there is a beautiful midrash that we are not going to, it's not part of my slides. So I'm going to mention it, off the record, because it's what happened. There is a beautiful midrash that it says that Caleb, unlike Joshua, Caleb wasn't immune to joining the majority, to being sucked into this peer pressure. So, according to the midrash, he located in the land of Israel the cave of where our patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah were buried. Remember, Rachel was buried along the way, but they couldn't make it. So he went there to pray to our ancestors for strength, to remain strong into his principles. And I think it's a beautiful midrash. Because again, don't get sucked into the details when you read midrashim. You have to understand the general principle. You have to understand the metaphor. And the metaphor is that sometimes when we struggle in our morals, when we struggle in our ethics, when we struggle in our behavior, when we don't know what to do, one solution is to connect with the teaching of our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents. And we ask ourselves, what would they do? Did they ever teach me something about this that I can use, I can apply in my life? Because that's exactly what Caleb is teaching us. That when he was struggling in his principles, he went and got the courage he needed from his ancestors. I think it's a beautiful teaching. Okay, and we are going to see a little bit how strong, at the end of the day, how strong Joshua and Caleb, in English we call it Caleb, right? The name Caleb, how strong they were in their beliefs, in their principle, to be able to oppose not only 10 bad spies, but also everybody else that those 10 convinced. So all of a sudden it wasn't 2 against 10, it was 2 against everybody now. And they still remain strong on their beliefs. So good for them. Good for them. And Brenda, you said it so relates to our life today. Absolutely, Randy. Silence like a cancer grows. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's not even silence. Sometimes it's, being vocal for something that you don't believe, but you do it anyway. So, anyway. So let's go to the parsha. Let's begin, because there is a lot to analyze for the opening of this week's parsha. So remember, Shlach Lecha. Why it's called Shlach Lecha? You will see there in the Hebrew, in the second line, the words are Shelach Lecha Anashim. So it says, V'daber Adonai el Moshe lemor, Shlach Lecha Anashim. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, send out for yourself agents to scout the land of Canaan, which I'm giving to the Israelite people. Send someone from each of their ancestral tribes, each one a chieftain among them. So 12. You'll see. Welcome to the class. All I read here is EcoTank 420. If you want to tell us your name, that would be great. Okay, so everybody can welcome you properly. EcoTank 420, welcome to the class. So, what we have here is God kind of endorsing the idea of sending the spies to the land, okay? And setting up guidelines for that, for the project. Well, what are the guidelines? It has to be only one per tribe, and each one of the people sent, it has to be like a leader, an important person. Why is that? I think it's important because when they come back with a report, nobody will, challenge them. Nobody will challenge them because they're already leaders. And when a leader speaks, hi Daniel, welcome to the class. So, yeah, that's what it is. Now, there is something very interesting here, and it's the language used by the Torah. And you will see in a minute what I'm talking about, because, if I... You'll see. I don't want to give you spoilers, because when I mention it again, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Before we go there, the rabbis noticed that this parsha, it connected directly after the episode where Miriam, Moses' sister, she got leprosy for gossiping. Remember, Miriam didn't like Moses' new wife. According to the rabbis, it's because Moses' new wife was from Ethiopia, a black woman. And then Miriam said, hey, she doesn't look like us. She's different. There's a whole class there. In fact, I had to prepare for last week. But now you're going to have to wait another year to listen to my comments on that parsha. But it's... So Miriam committed the sin of gossip. She started to trash Moses' new wife in front of Aaron, and she gets punished with leprosy. Eventually, Moses prayed for her. She gets healed, right? All is good, but we have a strong message there that gossiping is not good, right? Not good. So, the Midrash says, why is the section dealing with the spies put in juxtaposition, right, one after the other, with the section dealing with Miriam's punishment for gossiping? Why? Well, to show the grievousness of the spies' sin. Because she, Miriam, was punished on account of the slander which she uttered against her brother Moses. And these sinners witnessed it, and yet they did not take a lesson from her. What does it mean? Everybody saw that Miriam's got leprosy for slandering Moses and his wife. Okay, they learned the lesson. Maybe you can argue, we didn't know that gossip was bad, whatever. Now you know. Now you know. Fair enough, now you know. And yet, the spies, they go to the land of Israel. They come back, and what do? They slander the land. They come with half-truth, with hidden intentions to trash the land and the project. They came with an agenda, and they use slander to move or to push their agenda forward. And the rabbi said, that's why we read in the Torah the story of the spies right after the story of Miriam, to let us know that they are connected, to let us know that there is one more way of slander, of gossip. It's not just against a person. Gossip could be against the land, against, a country. Gossip could be against a project that you don't like. So you will use whatever you need to use, including lies, subterfuges, to stop that project. But it's your hidden agenda. You don't make it public. So it's a very interesting thing. Okay, so this is the first thing that we have to, Shelley, you said a whole year. Yeah, well, whenever we study next year, last week's parsha, right? It's done. It passed. So you have to wait. You have to wait until we study that parsha next year. Hopefully next year I won't have a funeral. So, now, let's go back to this. And you're going to tell me what this reminds you to. The parsha said, send out for yourself. Right? Let me go back here. Look, it says, Adonai spoke to Moses saying, send out for yourself agent to scout the land of Canaan. Right? And now, the Rashi and the Talmud, they ask, right? Or they explain, what does it mean, send out for yourself? And they answer, as your mind dictates. What does it mean? God is saying, I'm not instructing you. In other words, God is saying, okay, do it as you wish. It's kind of endorsing it, but it's almost like the parsha the grammar of the paragraph makes it clear that this is not God's idea. You see, can you understand the difference? It's not the same as to say God said to Moses, okay, Moses, I want you to do this. Versus, okay, Moses, go ahead with your idea. Let's see what happens. Okay, it's not the same. Okay, so send out for yourself, Rashi explains, as your mind dictates. God saying, I'm not instructing you. If you so desire, send. For the people of Israel had come to Moses saying, let us send men before us. As it is written in the book of Deuteronomy, you all approach me. And Moses, consulting with God, said, God, I have said that it is a good land. By your life I shall not give you the option to err. So in other words, this is a perfect example of God teaching us a lesson on free will. God already told them multiple times the goodness of the land that flows milk and honey. Okay? That description was already there. So why did they need to go to check that God's words were true? So, in other words, by approaching Moses, requesting the spies to be sent to the promised land, they are showing lack of faith. Which is interesting, because if that's the cause, if that's the reason why they ask Moses to send spies, then we have a more difficult question to answer. Number one, why will Moses go ahead with it? And number two, why will God endorse it? All good questions. It's not every time that we stop and asking those questions. Why will God endorse the plan? And one answer, as I mentioned, is a teaching in free will. A teaching in free will. God gives us everything we need. God already told us how to live our lives. But sometimes we don't trust it and we try to outsmart God. Let's put it that way. Eventually we learn the lesson and then we go back, we connect with Torah, we learn God's promises and we apply them to our lives, and then something good comes out of it. But not before we had a chance to make a mistake, to learn from our mistakes. So this could be one reason why God endorsed the projects. Okay, send it, send out for yourself as you wish. Let's see what happened. Hopefully they will learn the lesson, right? I had a teacher who told me once, there is no winners and losers, there is winners and learners, right? If you win, you win. If you don't, you learn. So this is what happened here. Maybe it's an example of that. Yeah. Lori, you said, I watched videos on the Shadow Zodiac channel last week. Yeah, you can also do that. It's a good, thank you, Lori, for the reminder that all these classes stay in our YouTube channel forever. So you have classes for Torah Lecha for years and years in the past. All you have to do is to go to our YouTube channel, NZ Winnipeg. I believe we created a playlist with all the Torah Lecha, so you can go there to study past Parshiot if you wish. Okay, Daniel, you say here, don't fault your brother for the splinter in the eye through the log in your own. Yeah, thank you for that reminder. It's yes, absolutely. So let's continue here. Let's continue because this I love this. Listen to this. Rabbeinu Bachya says, Rashi explains the word shlach lecha as in accordance with your judgment, right? Remember, we just read, if you want to do it. God meant, I am not commanding you to do this, but I leave it up to you. Other commentators understand the word lecha, so shlach lecha, send to yourself, as meaning for your benefit. It means something similar to when Moses was told to make himself the trumpets, where the words lecha, for your benefit, is also mentioned. Now, the other thing that it reminds me, I don't know if you remember this. When I read shlach lecha, it reminds me to lech lecha. Remember one of the first Torah portions in the book of Genesis, when God said to Abraham, leave your house, go to the land that I will tell you? That eventually we know there was the land of Israel, the land of Canaan. Remember that? The word is lech lecha. And many times is translated as go for your benefit. Go because it's good for you. In other words, don't stay where you are. It's a terrible place for you to flourish. And we know this, we can also relate to that many times wherever we live is not the best environment for us to thrive. So it's not uncommon that people move to a different city, to a different country, like myself. I was living in Argentina, then in Chile, then eventually I moved to Winnipeg because I thought that moving to Winnipeg, it was going to be for my benefit. So that was my Lecha moment. When I moved to a new place, because I felt that I had more opportunities to grow professionally here. So with Abraham was the same thing. God said to Abraham, Lech Lecha, leave your place and go to a different place for your own benefit. Don't stay in this toxic environment where you were born. Go there. So we already learned the concept of Lecha to you as for your benefit. So now we can understand this week's Parsha with the same lens. So it says, Shlach Lecha, send for your benefit. You understand that? Send for your benefit. What does it mean, send for your benefit? Think for a minute, because we are going to expand that topic after I finish reading this paragraph. Let's conclude with this slide. It says, in any case, we learn from the whole passage how even a group of righteous men can turn into wicked people. This is what Solomon meant when he said that he who engages in slander is foolish. That means as soon as he engages in slander, he becomes a fool. So, this is what Rabbi Anibal is trying to imply. Moses had a great idea. Sending the spies could be a very good thing. Why? Because when they will come back, they will bring strategic information that it could be used to plan ahead the campaign into entering to the promised land. But the spies misunderstood the goal of the excursion. It was not about going to the land of Israel to report if it was possible or not to conquer the land. That was not what it was asked from them. What Moses asked them is go back and bring back a report so we can plan the best strategy to conquer the land. And I hope you can understand the difference. So they made a mistake. They never supposed to say yes or no. They're supposed to say this is the best way to do it. And they failed. Not only they failed, but they engaged in slander to avoid their responsibility. And it says that on paper, the 12 people that they were handpicked to be sent to scout the land were leaders, smart people, righteous people. So what happened to them as soon as they started to slander the land? They lost their righteousness, because that is one of the byproducts of slander, of gossip. You could be a righteous person, but as soon as you engage in gossip, you're not righteous anymore. You're a fool. And this is also something that we learn from this week's Parsha. Brenda, you said, did you know how cold it was when you moved there? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I knew how cold, but cold is just something that's, you can deal with cold. You can deal with cold. With lack of opportunities in South America, you cannot deal with that. And it's true. I came here, I started to go to conventions and met other people. Cold is nothing. I don't even think about cold except when you guys remind me that it's cold. That's the thing. Lori says, last week I was about to apply for a promotion Washington, D.C. So it said, I will not fear, all reports are good, and applied. They chose someone else. Okay, next time, Lori. Next time will be your time. But sometimes it's like this. The Parsha will say sometimes we need to relocate. is part of life, but only if it's lecha, only if it's for your benefit. That is the key here. Go for your benefit. That's it. Okay, Daniel, thank you for your participation. Hope to see you again. We are here every week. Same time. Okay? Have a wonderful day. So let's continue. Now, let's continue analyzing the words lecha. Listen to this. We need to analyze why the word lecha was written here. Our sages understand the word as indicating permission rather than a command. We can get that sense from the words of Rashi, from the words of the Talmud. Okay? That lecha means permission, not command. So in other words, even when God said to Abraham, Lech lecha, it implies that Abraham already had the idea of living at the place where he was. Abraham already knew that that wasn't the right place for him because he has all this whole new idea of the world, of what to bring to the world, and he couldn't do anything there. So he already had it. So when God said to Abraham, Lech lecha, God was enabling Abraham to follow his own heart. Okay? And here is the same. Here we're understanding that one way of understanding the word lecha is the permission to follow your heart. Okay? The permission to follow your heart. Let's continue. This leaves us with the puzzle why God would consent to an initiative which he knew would result in disaster. If we were to see the fact that spies were sent out as the root cause for the disaster, then Joshua certainly would have learned the lesson and should not have sent out spies before capturing Jericho. Aha! I'm glad that somebody is engaging into analyzing this. Because now if we learn from this episode that sending spies, because the lack of faith and everything that it involves is a bad idea, why would Joshua do the same thing when it was his turn to try again to enter to the promised land? Fair question. Let's continue. It follows that the idea of sending spies to help in the conquest of the Holy Land was not objectionable in itself. So again, the idea of sending spies is not bad. Okay? The concept of sending spies is not bad in itself. If the reason the mission failed was due to the caliber of the spies, this too is hard to accept, seeing that the Torah testifies that Moses sent out righteous men of whom God had approved. So again, if the problem, okay, let's agree that the problem is not the concept of sending spies, but the concept, but the problem was that the people that went to scout the land were not the right people. Well, that argument also failed because it says that Moses personally handpicked those people. Moses gave their approval to be the ones going. So that cannot be. Okay? That cannot be. So let's continue. We may therefore understand God's command or consent for Moses to send out spies as God agreeing for Moses to send out spies provided their mission was that Moses understood it to be. That means to discover the hidden treasures of the Canaanites, but not if the spies' mission were to determine if the land was capable of being captured by the Israelites. That's what I mentioned before. God agreed only if it was perfectly understood by everybody. The mission was, to take notes of everything in the land to better plan how to conquer the land, and not to start a debate if it was possible or not. Okay? So that's it. That's what it is. So it looks at the beginning, both Moses and God were in agreement that was the idea. It looks like Moses was convinced that the spies also understood their mission, that they were not being sent to figure out what was possible or not, just to help plan. Okay? So Moses was honestly convinced that the spies understood their assignment. After all, Moses said, I know these people. They are smart people. Right? I'm pretty sure they understood what they're supposed to do. But, let's continue. Moses suspected their lack of faith. But, seeing that God has not denied him the sending out of the spies, he failed to divine what God really had in mind when he granted his consent. So, Moses had doubts. But he said, hey, God is allowing them to go. Yes, God is allowing them to go because the goal was to bring a report on how to prepare the military battles. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. And Moses failed to see that God shared his worry that the lack of faith of that generation will be in their way. Moses wasn't able to see that, unfortunately. And because Moses looked at the spies as smart people. And sometimes your brains alone are not enough when the mission involves also spiritual awareness. It's almost like they are two separate things. I mean, it shouldn't, but it is. It shouldn't, but it is. Being in a situation where we know in every generation people that they are brilliant people, smart, but they have no spiritual awareness. And I'm pretty sure we all can relate to this. Intelligent, smart people without spiritual awareness. And according to this story, this is what happened when we are locked into a situation where faith plays a big factor. And their faith was not strong. So they failed on their mission. Their brains didn't save them. The brain helped them, to conceive this kind of trick to say, okay, let's land on the land. Maybe we're going to go back. They weren't able to see that was not part of the plan. There is no plan B. There was only plan A, which is to enter to the land of Canaan. So their faith was not strong. And you may ask, how is that possible? This is the people who actually witnessed the revelation. This is the generation where, they saw the words of God when God revealed the Torah. And now they come to fail spiritually like this? Keep that thought. I'm going to explain that in a minute. Let me wrap up this slide. Now, as to the question why God gave his consent, saying that he knew what was going to happen, we must conclude that if God had denied the people's request, the result would have been even worse. So there are many cases in the Torah where God gives concessions, because God knows that a cold turkey no, it will be against the entire project. And when I'm saying here the entire project, it means to develop the Jewish people and to enter into the promised land. Let me give you a few examples of this, of God making concessions. One is, to me, the most clear, is the concept of sacrifices. Can you imagine God saying to the people of Israel after they left Egypt, no more sacrifices for you guys. I don't need sacrifices. You need to make sacrifices because you think is the only way to communicate with the divine. But that concept, according to the rabbis, was so ingrained, so embedded on people's mentalities on those times that saying no will be a disaster. So God makes a concession. Okay, guys, whatever. I will make you make sacrifices, but with all these restrictions. Only in Jerusalem, the altar we have to be different from the altars that idolaters use, and so forth. Another concession that God made to the people of Israel was to have a king. And this is a concept that you will see constantly being brought back by the prophets. Every time the prophets confront one of these corrupted kings in Israel, where they remind the people of Israel, God doesn't want a king. God is king. You guys want a king. But the ideal is not to have a king other than God. But well, you want to have a king like all other nations, fine. Suit yourself. Have a king like all the other nations. Right? But also with all these restrictions. So God sometimes they will have to negotiate with the Jewish people, with the Israelites, because a hard no will be a disaster at the end of the project. So in this case, it's the same. You want to send spies? God said, if I say no to them, they're going to go back to Egypt. Okay, send the spies. And I know you're going to fail, but at least future generations are going to learn a lesson out of it. And that is what Orach Chaim is saying in this text, right? So let me think what you think about this, because I think this is a very profound, very, very profound concept, especially the concept of how, being a smart person doesn't make you a person of faith. It does not. It does not. And even if you are a person who experienced miracles, doesn't make you a long-term person of faith. We see this from this generation who after they are the one who witnessed the opening of the Red Sea. They are the one who witnessed the giving of the Torah and so many other open miracles, explicit miracles, in the way we don't see in this generation. And yet, they failed. They failed. I find it fascinating. What can I say? Right? Now, this is what they say, the spies. We arrived at the land to which you sent us, and indeed it flows milk and honey, and this is the fruit, and they show samples of what they brought. But the people that dwells in the land is powerful. The cities are greatly fortified, and we also saw there the offsprings of the giants. And we all know that, when we use the word but, what happened? It means that, we are negating everything that we say before that word. That's the reality. When we say to somebody, yeah, you know what? You're a great guy, but we already know that everything that comes after will negate our statement, you're a great guy. Because that's unfortunately the way the word but means. And as soon as the spies used the word but, I knew they were in trouble. Because that's unfortunately what it is. Now, let's go to the Ramban. And he explains the concept of this terrible word better than anybody else. Listen to this. The spies report open with the answers to the issues they've been charged to investigate. So far, so good. In all this, they said the truth. Therefore, they indeed should have continued. The people that dwelt in the land is powerful, right? For Moses commanded them to find out if they were strong or weak. So you see, the report technically was truthful. Technically, because they need they're strong, so we will strategize to create an army with specific tactics and techniques. It's all great, it's all good. So far, so good. Now, the wickedness of the spies was uttering the word but. Without the word but, the report would have continued to be a simple enumeration of facts. The addition of but signified something negative and beyond human capacity, something impossible to achieve under any circumstances. Thus, the spies were reporting that the desirability of the land notwithstanding, it was impossible to vanquish. the native population. Yeah, very sad the way they presented it. The way. What should have said is the people there is very powerful. So what? We took out Egypt. Don't you think we can take them out? But that's not the way they presented it, unfortunately. Let's continue, because I want to tell you more about this. What happened after? So, long story short, the 10 spies with the negative report, they convinced the Israelites to go back to Egypt. And remember that the rabbis say that had God denied them the opportunity to send the spies, it would be an even worse situation than this. So I can't even imagine how this could be any worse. How can this be any worse? Because after the people of Israel heard the report, they said, the entire assembly raised up and issued its voice. The people wept that night. Can you visualize this, guys? I'm asking you please to use your imagination. Imagine you are one of them. You are part of the nation of Israel. The 10 spies come and they tell you the story. You are terrified by what they are telling you. Because remember, you also share their lack of faith. You already forgot what God did at the Red Sea and the way God revealed the Torah. That's past history. Now all you have in your mind is this terrifying report that they brought. And then they, and maybe you, wept that whole night. Try to think in your own life. A night that maybe, you were terrified about an exam or something that you have the next day and you couldn't sleep and you are thinking about it all night. But think about this. Okay? So sometimes when we read Torah, you have to feel what they feel. Let's continue. All the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron, and the entire assembly said to them, if only we have died in the land of Egypt. Why is Hashem bringing us to this land to die by the sword? Okay? And then at the end, they said that they want to go back to Egypt. Terrible. Terrible. But now, I see the time. I want to kind of start wrapping up with this text by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein is teaching us here the different kind of faith that we have. We have faith that we achieve through witnessing miracles, which is pretty much what the people of Israel experienced back then, and we already know what happened with them. And we have a different kind of faith that is the one that we achieve through using our intelligence, which is also something that they failed to use to strengthen their faith, right? That's something that Moses didn't understand. But listen to this, what Moshe Feinstein said. There is a great difference between individuals who have developed a faith in and loyalty to God through labor and toil, and those who experience an epiphany through miracles and wonders. In other words, what Moshe Feinstein said, look, there are people here that they study Torah, right? And they come to shul every day and night. And they study the Talmud, and they come to lectures, and they wrestle with the verses, and they are critical, and they study, and they ask. That's what he called, developing faith and loyalty to God through labor and toil. Okay, you understand that? That's what he's saying. So there are people that they do that. And there are others that, they have faith because they experience an epiphany through miracles and wonders. The generation of the wilderness gained their awareness of God through the miracles that they witnessed over the prior 2 years. Although this generation had the greatest awareness of the Creator in the history of the world, they were accustomed to believe only in that which their eyes saw. since they had only seen supernatural miracles, but had not yet observed God's providence manifest in nature, such as his intervention to assure victory in battle and conquest, they could not fathom this type of miracle. So you see, this is very deep in the sense that some people that they believe that the only miracles are the supernatural miracles. But to be able to see nature as a miracle, then for that, you have to use your seichel, your intelligence, to understand that concept. It comes through observation, through questioning, and through analyzing. And that is something that generation lacked. Okay? Let's continue. Without supernatural intervention, they will have to engage in a war that they could not naturally win. Since their faith was rooted in God's obvious wonders, they lacked a developed awareness of God and the spiritual world, maintaining an attitude of, well, I'll believe it when I see it. This generation believed because they did actually see wonders, but they had not been trained to use their intellectual faculties and rational thought to have faith even before any sign of assistance or respite were apparent. And this is interesting because Moses, and the Torah says that Moses had a different kind of relationship with God. So Moses got it. But why Moses failed to see that into other people, that Moses failed to see the kind of experience that he had of God is not the same as the other people had. So, but he failed to see that and to adjust his style of leadership to that. But in other words, also what Rabbi Moshe Feinstein said is that the fact that, our way to understand God through study, through observation, through mentoring that we have in this generation is somehow higher than the kind of connection with God and faith that generation had through supernatural miracles. And I know that sometimes we wish we could have supernatural miracles to believe. But at the end of the day, what this Moshe Feinstein is saying is, don't bother asking that, because that generation saw supernatural things and they couldn't believe either. So stick with the books, stick with Torah, stick asking rabbis, stick coming to lectures, keep studying. That is way superior than seeing supernatural things in the world, right? It's yeah. So, well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you. And by the way, I hope you're going to join us this Friday for Kabbalah Shabbat. We have another special one. It's the Pride Kabbalah Shabbat. And it's going to be, the service is going to be led again by Cantor Leslie and myself. So don't miss that one this Friday, 5:30. We have a special repertoire and beautiful things happening in that service. So I hope, I hope you can make it. Okay. So yes, I am doing Kabbalah Shabbat with Cantor Leslie tomorrow at 5:30, same time, but it's part of the Pride month. So we have a dinner after. So yeah. Okay. Give it a thumbs up for the class. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. The class is going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m., 8 Central. And yeah, hope to see you all soon. Be safe, be blessed, and hope to see you soon. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being there. Bye, everyone.